at Granite Springs Asset Management. Vincent, so glad to have you. We spoke during the summer when everything was so tumultuous here in this country. I got to ask you, what do you think of the process that's happening in Europe right now?
Well, frankly, I think they're reached the stage where something absolutely must be done. So I think over the next week or so, you're going to hear something accomplished. The reality is, though, that anything they say is going to be very difficult to put into practice because of all the new legislative changes that have been made across Europe requiring approval by various parliaments of anything these leaders say. So I'm not optimistic about the final result, but I'm optimistic about the near-term announcement effect.
Does a country like France deserve to be AAA in your view?
Probably not, and the reason being is that the contingent claims on France are rising very rapidly. And you've seen both major rating agencies point that out. A recapitalization of banks, which is absolutely necessary in Europe, will cost France a lot. And I think French resistance has mainly been due to the fact that there's a French presidential election next April and May, and I don't think President Sarkozy wants to go in that election with a downgrade.
Vincent, give us a little behind the scenes. When you were at Moody's and you were heading up the sovereign risk group there, what is happening at this point? I mean, are they talking actively, do you think, given your experience with the rating agencies, about the need to hold off on a ratings change at this stage? I mean, there was one lawmaker calling for a ban on all ratings until they get the situation settled.
Right. Well, historically, almost all issuers who thought they would be downgraded made a strong argument against the downgrade. But at least when I was there, that never really had any final impact. And as you saw recently, S&P, despite all the uproar, still downgraded the United States. Now, there may be some European legislators who say they want to suspend ratings during an emergency, but that wasn't their language when Brazil and Mexico and Argentina were under review. It seems like the Europeans want to be treated specially.
Vincent, we seem to be coming back to the same issues all the time. And once again now, the Greek haircuts on bonds has come up as a topic of conversation. We thought it was going to be 50%. It was originally 21% as a haircut. Then it seemed as if the bondholders' negotiator refused to take a greater haircut. But now we're hearing they need to take a much bigger haircut.
Well, the reality is that at a minimum, you need a 50 to 60% haircut just to stabilize the situation in Greece.
50 to 60.
At a minimum. But that still doesn't solve the medium and long-term problem because Greek civil society just can't bear the kind of reforms required. And we're seeing that played out in the streets of Athens. It's just not possible, not tenable over time.
Now, Vincent, I have to ask you, if there's the possibility of a Greek write-down, it begs the question, is there a possibility of other write-downs? I just want to show you briefly the yield on the 10-year bonds for a couple of different countries. Germany, the benchmark, 2.1. You look at France, 3.3. And then Spain and Italy creeping up towards 6%. That still seems fairly low. In your view, are those yields relatively low given the seriousness of this situation?
Well, again, if you're looking across the Eurozone, which instruments would you prefer to hold if you have ongoing fiscal austerity? It's sort of like in the United States when S&P downgraded the U.S. rating. What happened? Treasury yields actually surged. Frankly, I think the safest of all of the securities in the Eurozone remain German bunds. And France is at a minor risk, but it's a risk nonetheless because they have to bail out their banks, and it's going to be very costly. And the contingent claims only matter if the contingent claims become real claims. And unfortunately, the contingent claims on France may in fact become real claims.
Now, I have to ask you also, about a week ago, in fact, a week ago today, the EFSF, this European Stability Fund, was, what, about 250 million euros. Then it jumped on Monday to about 450 million euros. And then there was talk of even 2 trillion. Where's this money coming from?
Well, they're trying to come up with all sorts of different plans to leverage the amount of funds available, merge the Financial Stability Fund with the future European stability mechanism. But all these problems go back to legislative difficulties because they have to be passed. For instance, right now, Merkel must get approval from her finance committee before she can do any new deals.
Vincent, is it possible at this point for Greece to step away from the European Union? That was months ago a solution that many people were proposing, that they just step away from the European Union. Is that possible at this point?
Well, frankly, given the chaos that's going on in Athens, I don't really think it makes much difference to the average Greek. Things are a mess. They're not going to get better anytime soon. So how much more could be lost than what's already occurred?
Would it take pressure, though, off of the rest of the EU?
Well, in terms of the Eurozone rather than the EU,
yes, the Eurozone.
It wouldn't, because it would also then open up the possibility that some other countries might leave the Eurozone, which I've been advocating for years, that a number of the peripheral countries should leave.
Vincent, I just have to ask you, I know that you left Moody's a few months ago. You're now managing money. But if you were still at Moody's, what would be the title of the report that you might write next week and send to Moody's clients?
Right. Well, first of all, I have to add that I've been not with Moody's for a number of years now. But if I had to issue a report, I would just say buyer beware. Buyer beware.
That's a good one. It's an oldie but a goodie and appropriate for this situation. Thank you so much, Vincent. Always good to have you. Vincent Truglia of Granite Springs Asset Management on what is happening in Europe.